Today I'm going to do a painting on this Saunders Waterford 140 pound 100% cotton watercolor paper. It's cold pressed and it is a warm white. I kind of have an obsession with paper and I want to try all the paper. And in the past I've ordered 10 sheets to get the bulk discount, and then if you order enough then you get free shipping. And it makes the paper a lot cheaper, but unfortunately, sometimes you get paper that you don't like. So this time I restrained myself and I went to the local Dick Blick and I got one sheet of this paper. And I paid something ridiculous, like $13.57 for this one sheet. But at least I know, I'll get to know whether or not I like it. And when I got home, I tore it into quarters. So each quarter is approximately 11 by 15 inches, that's a nice evaluation size. It's big enough you can do a lot with it. It'll fit in a lot of frames, but you've taken this inordinately expensive piece of paper and made it a little more economical. Something else, since this is brand new paper and I'm not sure how it's going to react, I decided to stretch it. I used to stretch my watercolor paper a lot, and I haven't for a while. I've gotten lazy, and I will say that I prefer the way it handles after it's been stretched, because when you go to frame it, it's much easier to make it nice and flat and no warps or wobbles in it that you have to try and wrestle down. And really, it's not that hard to stretch your watercolor paper. There are methods that are really intimidating, like, having this big tray. Where am I going to put this tray? And I don't know. It's very intimidating, and it does not have to be a scary, difficult process. I use the Cheap Joe's method, and I'll put a link in the description, but it's really easy. You do need some gator board or creosote board, I think that's what they call it, but you do need that. That is an investment you need to make. But other than that, you just put it on the gator board and you wet one side of it, you turn it over and you brush water on the other side of it and get it nice and wet. You do that a couple times till it feels like it's very evenly saturated and wet, and then you make sure your gator board is level so that the water doesn't drain off and your water stays wet evenly. And then you come back to it like a half an hour later and the fiber's all stretched out, and you might put a little more water on it and just make sure it's nice and even and flat. And then you dry off your brush and just kind of whisk away some of that extra water. You might use some paper towels to help blot it up, and then you just staple it down. I use just a regular desk stapler, and I flatten it, like I unhinge it, and then I just staple it right down to that gator board. You don't have to have a special stapler to do it. And boy, when it's all done, it's nice and flat. You let it dry overnight, or maybe 2 days. I let it dry overnight, and it's plenty. It's the winter time, and it's really, the air's dry. It dries fast. And then it's ready to go. And it's not that hard, you guys. I mean, the one drawback to it is that if you only have one gator board, you can only do one painting at a time. And that's probably the biggest reason why I got lazy and didn't do it. That's the biggest reason. So get more than one. Save up your money. You can also get a really big gator board and cut it down to give it a little bit bigger than the size of paper that you usually like to do. I like to give it a couple of inches on each border, if possible, at least an inch. So say you like to use 8 by 10 inch images. So your paper would be like, I don't know, 9 by 11. So then you'd make your gator board 10 by 12, or ideally maybe 11 by 13. Anyway, you can cut your gator board down a little bit, and that would save you quite a lot of money there too, and give you more than one gator board. Just an idea. So the inspiration for this painting was the frame that I had. It's kind of a heavy wooden gilded frame, kind of, I don't know, reminds me of Baroque or Rococo, not quite as ornate, but still pretty ornate. And I like the idea of the juxtaposition of something really modern with something that throws back to that heavily ornamented Baroque or Rococo period. And so I knew exactly what I wanted to do, something modern and non-representational, really bright colors. So I took the frame and I measured the inside of the opening, which was approximately 9 3/4 by 10 3/4. And I knew I wanted just a little bit of an outline around the painting, between the painting and the frame. And I knew I wasn't going to mat it. So once my paper was dry, I measured it and taped it so that the picture size would be approximately 9.5 by 10.5. And then I got that little, almost an 1/8 of an inch border just around the picture between that and the edge of the frame. So I had 3/4 of this paper left. So I knew if I screwed it up, it would be okay. I could redo it. And I could get to know the paper. I knew I might not even like the paper, but it was a good way to test this whole process out, because now I'm starting to sell some of my original artwork on my website. And this way, I don't know, I can create some artwork for standard sized frames and mats. And that would just make it easier for anybody who wanted to buy it. They could either take it to a framer and, spend that posh money, or they could just go to IKEA or, I don't know, some place like that. We have this place called Tuesday Morning. I don't know if you guys have a place like that. Or, you can even recycle your old artwork. You may have some frames that are really nice, but you don't really care for the artwork anymore. Your decor has changed. And I'm not a snob about artwork being used as decor. My degree is in interior decorating, or actually interior merchandising is what it was called at the time. Now it's interior design. But basically, one of the reasons I got into painting was because I wanted some art for my walls. And I was too cheap to go buy expensive art, and I didn't want cheap art. So I figured I'd make my own. And that's really kind of how I got back into this after, I don't know, many years of not doing any art. But I never really painted a whole lot. Mostly I drew. And anyway, somehow I got into painting. And I really love it. I especially love watercolor. I mean, watercolor used to be, or I thought watercolor was, you couldn't get very bright, vivid, vibrant colors with it. But that's probably because I was using praying watercolors a million years ago. And that's what I thought watercolor was. But anyway, I went way off topic and way off tangent, but sometimes it's fun to do that. And anyway, now you know how to measure and tape off your watercolor paper so that you can do a painting that will fit inside whatever frame you want to do, whether it's a custom frame or a standard frame. It doesn't matter. Now you know how to size your art in such a way that you can put it in one of those frames and get it hung on your walls or someone else's walls. Who knows? Anyway, you do it however you want to, but hopefully this helped. When I was in school for interiors, they taught us that it's always good to have a few things in the room to balance out whatever else you have. So if everything is very light you need some dark values in there to kind of ground everything. And I feel like adding the black grounded this painting for me. So now once the painting is dry, you've got to get those staples up. And I fussed with a staple remover until I remembered why I never use a staple remover on this. And I got my flathead screwdriver and I just went underneath all of the staples underneath the paper so I wouldn't mar the surface of the paper that you see. And then you have to kind of go, it's a tedious process. You have to get all those staples out. It's tedious, but it's not that hard. You can do it. You probably mess up your manicure if you have one. But when you get done, it's so flat. It's just such a refreshing thing to have such a nice flat painting. And if you're going to scan it in your scanner, the platen will help to even flatten it further. But look at that. There's no ripple. It'll go under a frame so nicely. And then you can just cut those edges off where the staples are or not, depending on how much space you have in your frame. But I'm just going to take and use my slice knife and get those little edges off where the staples were. So it's nice to get the staples as close to the edge as you can and still, have it be able to securely hold the paper. And that just about does it for this video. I want to say thank you to all my new subscribers. My channel grew almost 2,000 subscribers in the past year, and that just blows my mind. So I want to thank you if you're new and welcome you. And for those of you who've been waiting for me to put out a video, I want to say thank you for your patience. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye. All artwork was produced by human hands. This video utilized a non-AI generated spokesperson.